Have you ever felt it? That deep, unsettling sense that the greatest deception ever woven into the fabric of our world isn't about politics, wealth, or power, but something far more intimate, far more sacred. What if the most dangerous lie you've ever been told is the one about what it means to be a good person? Dietrich Bonhoeffer once said, "Silence in the face of evil is itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act." This isn't just a quote. It's a divine key, a frequency of truth that unlocks a terrifying realization that the systems of this world are not dismantled by villains and monsters, but are instead upheld by the silent, the polite, the cooperative, by good people who believe they are doing the right thing. If this frequency resonates with your soul, if you've ever felt the profound weight of this paradox, let me know in the comments by typing, "I am awake." Your validation helps other awakened souls find this message and know they are not alone. Be sure to like and subscribe to join a collective that chooses the discomfort of truth over the illusion of comfort. What if I told you that the world's unraveling isn't caused by those who openly embrace darkness, but by the very people we've been taught to admire? Not the villains, not the monsters lurking in the shadows, but the decent, the polite, the cooperative. The ones who follow orders without question, who avoid conflict at all costs, who just want to get along and keep the peace. These are the people who, in their deep desire to be good, become the most effective instruments of systems that perpetuate suffering. They are the perfectly polished cogs in a machine they don't understand, the silent pillars holding up a crumbling facade. There's a profound truth here, a splinter in the mind of the awakening soul. The good man, as defined by society, is often the greatest obstacle to true righteousness. He is the guardian of a status quo that may be deeply misaligned with divine will, and his perceived virtue becomes a shield against necessary change. Let me tell you a story, not of fiction, but of a chilling truth unearthed from the depths of the human psyche. Journey with me back to 1961, to the hallowed halls of Yale University. There, a psychologist named Stanley Milgram conducted what seemed like a simple experiment, a study designed to test a single, monumental question. How far would ordinary people, souls just like you and me, go in obeying an authority figure, even if it meant betraying their own conscience? Participants were brought into a sterile, quiet lab. They were told they were teachers, tasked with helping a learner in another room memorize a list of words. For every mistake the learner made, the teacher was instructed to administer an electric shock, with the voltage increasing with each error. In front of them sat a machine, a formidable panel of switches labeled with increasing voltages, culminating in a terrifying 450 volts, marked with a chilling XXX, danger, severe shock. What these participants didn't know was that the learner was an actor. The screams of agony they heard through the wall weren't real. The desperate pleas to stop, the heart-wrenching mentions of a heart condition, the eventual, deafening silence, it was all a performance. But for the person sitting in that chair, finger hovering over the switch, the experience was devastatingly real. They believed, with every fiber of their being, that they were inflicting unimaginable pain upon another human. They could hear the consequences of their actions. They trembled, they sweated, they pleaded with the experimenter, a man in a calm, authoritative white lab coat. They would say, "I can't go on. He might be hurt. I don't want to be responsible for this." And each time the authority figure would respond with simple, detached phrases, "Please continue. The experiment requires that you continue. You have no other choice. You must go on." And what was the result of this test of the human spirit? Over 65% of these ordinary, decent people, these good men and women, continued to press the buttons all the way to the very end. All the way to 450 volts. They weren't sadists. They weren't filled with rage or malice. In fact, their visible distress proved they were deeply uncomfortable. They were simply being good. They were being helpful, cooperative participants. They were following the instructions given by a perceived expert, trusting in a system they assumed was benevolent. Their desire to be good, to do what was expected of them, completely overrode their own internal moral compass, their innate empathy. Milgram's conclusion was a spiritual earthquake. Good people, when guided by a trusted authority, will commit the most terrible acts, not out of hatred, but out of a misguided sense of duty. They will surrender their personal judgment, their very soul, in the name of following the rules. It wasn't about cruelty, it was about obedience. It was about the terrifying ease with which we can be programmed to perform acts of darkness, all while believing we are serving a righteous cause. This profound and unsettling truth was understood long before the advent of modern psychology. There was a man, a master diagnostician of the human soul and the architecture of power, who saw this pattern with crystal clarity centuries ago. Niccolò Machiavelli. His name has become synonymous with manipulation and deceit, but to see him as merely a teacher of evil is to miss the sacred mirror he was holding up to humanity. Machiavelli wasn't praising cruelty. He was issuing a divine warning against naivety. He saw that in the grand theater of the world, morality wasn't some golden light that guided history, but a powerful tool, a frequency often weaponized by those in power to control the masses. He saw that the man who obsesses over appearing morally good, the one who clings to an idealized version of virtue without understanding the harsh realities of the world, is the easiest to crush. Why? Because the world isn't ruled by intentions, it's ruled by consequences. And here is the quote: "The universal law of power dynamics that they will never teach you in school. He who wishes to be good all the time must fall among those who are not good." Read that again. It doesn't say goodness is bad. It says unyielding, blind, performative goodness, when weaponized by the wrong hands, makes you fragile, predictable, and ultimately defeatable. To Machiavelli, this kind of socially approved morality wasn't a shield, it was a leash. It was a set of rules designed to keep you manageable. And once a system convinces you that obedience is the highest form of virtue, it has absolute control. You've felt this in your own life, haven't you? That moment in the meeting where someone says something you know is profoundly wrong, but you stay silent because you don't want to be seen as difficult. That conversation with a friend or a boss where you smiled and nodded, even though something in your gut, your higher self, was screaming, "This isn't right." You weren't weak. You weren't cruel. You were trying to be good. But what if your very definition of good was never really yours to begin with? What if it was given to you, programmed into your frequency from birth, so that you would never stand in the way of the established order? This is the hidden architecture of control. It is not about evil or cruelty, but about the kind of compliant goodness that makes men easy to manage. And this brings us to a man who saw this manipulation of morality with piercing clarity long before us, Niccolò Machiavelli, a man who dared to ask the forbidden question: what if the obsession with being morally good is the very thing that keeps men powerless? Let's go there. We have been conditioned to believe that evil wears an obvious mask, that it creeps in through chaos, hatred, and rage. But more often, it walks in wearing a polite smile. It is reasonable, civilized, and cloaked in righteousness. That is the kind of subtle, pervasive evil Machiavelli understood, and that's what made his insights so dangerous. You probably know the name, Machiavelli, the father of political realism, the man behind The Prince, the thinker most associated with a cold, ruthless strategy of manipulation and deceit. But here is what they don't tell you in your history class. Machiavelli wasn't praising cruelty. He was warning us about the dangers of naivety. He wasn't celebrating tyranny. He was exposing how power actually works when it's stripped of all its moral packaging. You see, Machiavelli didn't believe in the fairy tales of politics. He didn't believe that good always triumphs. He believed that those who obsess over appearing good are the easiest to crush because the world isn't ruled by intentions, it's ruled by consequences. And here's the quote they never teach you in school, the one that holds a universe of truth. He who wishes to be good all the time must fall among those who are not good. Read that again. It doesn't say goodness is bad. It says unyielding goodness, when weaponized by the wrong hands, makes you fragile, predictable, and defeatable. To Machiavelli, morality wasn't some golden light that guided history. It was a tool, often used to control the masses, to shame dissenters, and to justify obedience in the name of virtue. He had lived it. In 16th century Florence, Machiavelli saw firsthand how noble-sounding ideals were used as weapons and how good men were systematically removed from positions of power because they refused to play the dirty game that others had already mastered. And that's the part we miss today. We remember the quotes about power. We forget the context. Machiavelli wasn't advising tyrants. He was diagnosing the illness of a naive citizenry. He was describing a system where goodness becomes performance, and performance replaces principle, where looking virtuous matters more than being honest. Sound familiar? Because what Machiavelli saw wasn't just about monarchs and courts. It was about us. About how easily we're manipulated when we cling to a self-image of being good and avoid the discomfort of hard truths. And so he asked a painful question. What happens to a society that punishes clarity and rewards virtue signaling? What happens to a man who wants to be honest but also wants to be liked? He gets torn in half. And that's what you may be feeling right now. That quiet, daily war between saying what you believe and saying what's acceptable, between doing what's right and doing what's safe, between being real and being good. Machiavelli's gift wasn't that he glorified manipulation. It's that he understood how moral systems can be corrupted from the inside until they serve power instead of truth. And once that happens, being a good man isn't a virtue, it's a liability. It's the role you're assigned to keep you quiet, compliant, and proud of it. Let that settle. Because the next time someone tells you to be a good man, you may want to ask, good for whom? So let's go deeper. What is this good man we've all been trained to become? He's polite, respectful, non-confrontational, always reasonable, always agreeable. He apologizes first. He avoids arguments. He swallows his anger. He forgives quickly. And above all, he keeps the peace. That's what we're told makes a man good. But if you strip away the social praise, if you stop listening to the applause, what you often find underneath is not strength, but silence. Not wisdom, but fear. Because the good man society rewards isn't the one who thinks clearly or acts justly, it's the one who behaves. The one who follows the script, who doesn't rock the boat, who smiles when he's supposed to, and nods at what he doesn't agree with. But history tells a darker story. Time and time again, atrocities were not committed by monsters, they were permitted by people who believed in being good. People who stayed quiet. People who followed the rules. People who didn't want to offend. It wasn't evil that made them dangerous. It was obedience. It was their unwillingness to disrupt the illusion of peace. They weren't villains. They were good citizens, good neighbors, good fathers. And that's what should terrify us. Because evil doesn't need your hatred, it just needs your silence. It needs you to see something wrong and do nothing. It needs you to witness injustice and stay neutral. It needs you to keep telling yourself, this isn't my fight. This isn't the right time. I don't want to make it worse. But the truth is, your silence doesn't make things better. It makes them permanent. Think about it. How many times have you swallowed your voice to keep the peace? How many times have you chosen politeness over principle? How many times have you let something slide, not because it was right, but because it was easier? And how many times did that choice leave a bitter taste, that quiet whisper inside you saying, that wasn't you? This is the danger of the good man myth. It teaches you that morality is about behavior, not integrity. That keeping things calm is better than making things right. It rewards you for being agreeable, but punishes you for being truthful. And over time, you stop thinking for yourself. You stop questioning, you stop resisting. Not because you don't care, but because you've been trained to equate discomfort with danger. But here's the truth. There is a kind of goodness that is more dangerous than evil. It's the kind that doesn't ask questions, the kind that prioritizes manners over justice, the kind that avoids conflict while injustice spreads. The kind that makes you feel moral even when you're complicit. That's not virtue, that's programming. And every system that seeks control knows exactly how to use it. Because if you want to build a society that never resists, you don't need to train it to be violent. You only need to train it to be silent. You only need men who don't want to cause trouble, men who follow instructions, men who want to be liked, men who are so afraid of being wrong that they forget how to be right. So ask yourself, when was the last time you stayed quiet? Not because you believed in peace, but because you were afraid of discomfort. That's not neutrality, that's surrender. And if that's what goodness has become, it might be time to let it go. Now that you see the cracks, let's pull back the curtain further. Because this isn't just about personal behavior, it's about designed systems. You were never just taught to be good, you were needed to be good. Because good people, well-behaved people, obedient people, are easier to manage, easier to predict, easier to neutralize. That's why every major system you grew up in rewarded you for being agreeable, but never for being honest. Look closely. Schools don't teach courage, they teach compliance. They reward neat handwriting, not independent thought. Quiet desks, right answers, standardized behavior. They don't prepare you to challenge anything. They prepare you to sit still while things go wrong. And it doesn't stop in childhood. Religious institutions often teach virtue, but only if it maintains the order. Questioning the rules, doubting the doctrine that's not seen as spiritual growth. That's labeled rebellion. In the workplace, you're praised for being a team player, which usually means don't question management, don't disrupt the culture, don't challenge what's broken. You can climb the ladder as long as you don't shake it. And in politics, don't even get started. The system doesn't reward truth-tellers. It rewards those who look virtuous, those who say the right things, perform the right outrage, signal the right values, without ever disturbing the deeper machinery. It's all optics. And the better you are at playing along, the more you're welcomed into the club. And here's the catch. The more good people a system has, the stronger its illusion becomes. Because if the people enforcing the rules believe they're moral, then no one questions the rules. That's not just power, that's insulation. Dietrich Bonhoeffer saw this long before us. A pastor, a philosopher, a man who resisted Hitler when most good citizens stayed silent. He wrote, "Stupidity is more dangerous than evil because it resists correction." Why? Because evil can be confronted. It's visible. You can fight it. But stupidity, the kind that believes it's being righteous, is immune to logic. Try to show a man the truth, and he'll argue. But try to show a man who thinks he's good, that he's enabling something wrong, and he'll call you the threat. So let me ask you something simple. Are you a good person or just a well-trained participant? Because those two things aren't the same. One requires thought, the other demands only repetition. One demands courage, the other rewards silence. And if the world keeps falling apart, not because of hatred, but because of compliance, then maybe we need fewer good men and more real ones. The kind who can see clearly, speak honestly, and walk away from applause if it means standing alone for what's true. So, where do we go from here? If goodness, as we've been taught to perform it, only serves systems, only protects comfort, only quiets truth, then maybe it's time we stop trying to be good and start learning how to be real. Because there's a kind of morality that doesn't ask for approval, a kind of integrity that doesn't require applause, a kind of strength that doesn't wear a smile. It starts with this: disobedient thinking. Not rebellion for rebellion's sake, not just being contrary, but the willingness to think without permission. To look at what everyone else is nodding at and ask, wait, does this even make sense? To question not only authority, but tradition, consensus, etiquette, and even your own assumptions. That's where it begins. You stop asking, how do I fit in? And you start asking, what do I actually believe? It means doing the uncomfortable thing, not because it's dramatic, but because it's necessary. It means saying, I don't agree, in rooms that reward silence and punish disruption with smiles. It means becoming the person who doesn't smooth things over, who doesn't make others comfortable, who doesn't bite his tongue just to be liked, who doesn't keep the peace just to avoid the truth. It means practicing being misunderstood, being disliked, being inconvenient. Not because you're trying to be difficult, but because the truth is difficult, and someone has to carry it. That's personal courage. That's the start. But it can't stop there, not if we're serious about change. We also need to confront how our systems reward the surface and punish the substance. How institutions continue to elevate the safe choice, the polished performer, the agreeable face, while quietly shutting out the ones who speak from conviction, the ones who won't follow the script. We need to stop praising politeness as if it's a moral achievement and start rewarding honesty, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. That means redefining what it means to be responsible. Because real responsibility is not measured by how well you behave in broken systems. It's measured by how deeply you question those systems in the first place and whether you dare to break from them. That's what Machiavelli understood, but was never allowed to say out loud in polite company. He wasn't praising schemers. He was warning about blind virtue and the systems that exploit it. He was showing us how power uses morality as a leash, how the obedient become weapons for the status quo, how the most obedient men become the most useful to the worst ideas because they never question the orders, and how the only way to survive with your soul intact is to think independently, even if it costs you everything else. So ask yourself, what would it mean to live by your own code, not the one handed to you by your school, your church, your employer, your peers? What would it mean to stop aiming for likability and start pursuing clarity? What would it mean to become someone no system can fully digest, not because you're violent, not because you're chaotic, but because you're awake, because you refuse to play along, because you're not afraid to see things as they are and name them, even when your voice shakes, because you're willing to live without the label of good, if that's the price for being real. That's what integrity looks like in a world built on performance. It's not loud, it's not angry, it's not flashy, it's clear, it's uncomfortable, and it's yours. So don't aim to be the good man. Be the real one, the honest one, the grounded one, the one who can't be manipulated because he's no longer performing. So now you see it. The system doesn't need you to be evil, it just needs you to be agreeable. It doesn't care if you think, it only cares that you comply. It will never ask you to betray your values, not directly. It will simply offer you peace in exchange for silence. It will call obedience maturity. It will call discomfort disrespect. It will call truth aggression. And you, if you're not careful, will start to believe it. Because when everyone around you starts calling the lie peace, it takes a different kind of strength to keep saying, this is wrong. So here's the question that matters now. Who still stands when standing feels like betrayal? Who still speaks when silence is easier? Who still sees when everyone else agrees not to? Not because they're louder, not because they're more clever, but because they've decided to stop performing. We live in a world where what's right has become inconvenient, and what's wrong has been rebranded as normal, practical, safe. We live in a culture that calls silence virtue, as long as it keeps things running. But silence isn't virtue, it's strategy. And most of the time, it's someone else's. So here's the real challenge. You don't have to become a rebel. You don't need to burn it all down. You don't have to scream or fight or rage. You just need to wake up. To stop being useful to what you no longer believe in. To stop playing a role that was never written for your soul. To stop agreeing with things that make you sick. And that starts with something small but radical. Stop trying to be liked. This week, don't try to be agreeable. Don't try to be impressive. Don't try to be what the room expects. Try this instead. Be truthful. Say what you mean, even if it comes out awkward, even if it's not well received, even if it makes things tense. Say it kindly, say it with care, but say it. Because your words, spoken with clarity and conscience, are maybe the only thing keeping the world honest. You don't need a platform. You don't need a following. You don't need to be loud. You just need to be real consistently, courageously, quietly if needed. And if that makes you difficult, or inconvenient, or misunderstood, then maybe that's the cost of clarity. Maybe that's the new definition of integrity. And maybe, just maybe, the world doesn't fall apart because of bad men, but because too many good ones forgot how to be honest. So let this be your line in the sand. Not anger, not noise, just truth. Start there, and don't move.